Okay, guys, so I did tell you that I was going to pull all this off of here, and I did. You'll notice that it is distinctly curved. Look at that. I told you this was a recurve. This is how you know. When I unlock it, it's curved out. It's solidly curved, and I've left it this way for a full 4 days. Now, you're going to get to watch. Well, I turn this from a bow that's made like that to a bow that's made like this, and we recurve it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down my serving. I'm not actually going to be recurving this the way you might think. Now, see this? This is how this shows at night. This is a gorgeous string at night, guys, but it doesn't show well during the day. But look at that. Isn't that pretty? Beautiful. Anyway, so this is proof that I recurved it as I talked about, but it's not. You don't even see what I originally did, which is why I said at one point I wanted to recurve it again. So this is what's happening right now. So now I'm going to be curving this exactly opposite of what all this curve is locked in really tight. You can see that I just bent it back straight and it comes right back to this shape. But that is because I put it under hard tension with its proper wrap and all the structural tensioning that went on, and then left it like that. Even this one, after I pulled all the paracord off, it's still holding that bowed angle. This is a proper recurve now, or at least it's about to be. So I'm going to pause, I'm going to spin it around, and all I'm going to do is turn it around this way and string the bow. And as soon as I do that, it will hold some tension and technically be a recurve. So hold on. All right, so I got all the tension off it. And instead of recurving it right now, I've just added a little tension to it while I work on it. And I kind of wanted to show something here when doing this. Now, I had noticed that these 2 points weren't exactly the same. And when I really checked, I realized I had actually taped this one about an inch farther than the other one. And this string, because it was wrapped up in mostly just tape, it was slocking down and down and down. I didn't realize there was no serving underneath it to really keep it in place. So I'm going to fix that. I'm going to peel that off and get it down to the exact same level as this one, which is rock solid, because it's up against this fiberglass dowel that sits right here. And this is the other end of that fiberglass dowel. So I want to make it sit tight up against this, but I've got some junk and tape in the way. I got to remove that, remove this, and then I can prep that by, I've also fixed this and already rewrapped this one and made it nice and neat. And I'm going to do the same with this one. And then once it's all like that, I'm actually going to recurve it, but now I'm going to hold pressure on it this way. I was thinking about this too, using a paracord tensioning setup. So now it goes back the other way, and then I wire this line to the two like this, and you can see how easily that now fits the curve of the bow because it wants to. And really, I could use that tendency that this has, and this is now under significant tension to hold it that way. I could use that tension to my advantage when I make the recurve. So that's to be considered, but I wanted to show you guys exactly where it's at right now. So I am going to go to the next step here because this may look like an odd assortment of stuff that I have laid out. I mean, I had 2 strings on this one. I've got a nice thick one here. I've got a variety of choices here. I'm about to do a thicker war bow, and I've decided from this what I really want isn't to try and do a really heavy bow with really weak limbs, because the outset of that is that I end up with really low arrow speeds for the amount of effort that I put into it. Now, as a light bow, it was giving me very quick arrow speeds with firing very really heavy arrows, and firing them at all accurately is impressive. And that's what it was doing. So I've decided that it makes a much better light bow than it does a heavy bow, which isn't surprising. This is partly to show you guys these have limits. The limbs have limits. Now, I did not break this. This is structurally just as good as it was. So I'm going to figure exactly how I want to approach this. And I did. I want two short bows. One is going to be this little guy. It'll be super light and light pull. No, it'll be as strong a pull as I can get out of it to get maximum arrow speeds out of this weak setup. But for that, it has to be optimized. That means I'm not going to do the dual bow version, because I don't, if you wanted an all-in-one bow, I highly recommend it. The dual bow is amazing. But what I want is different than that. I want a short bow that's nice and light, that's strong. as such, I need a slightly different design than what I was going for with the dual bow. I don't want these super light tips. In fact, I have cut reinforcements for these that are going to get laid up alongside and epoxied and locked in, both with tape and with paracord, the same as this was, because this worked out really, really strong. And then tape over top of it again, and it came out really well. So that's exactly the formula I'm going to follow here. I'm going to recurve this bow now and set this up, but I just wanted to hold this tension on it for a little bit while I checked all this out. I was actually going to restring it, and I found out that this was the case. So I was already in the middle of starting to restring. Anyway, no big deal. I just put this one on to give it tension, and then I was going to bow it into place. But I decided I'm going to actually put on these reinforcements first and lock those in place. I've got 4 separate pieces that I'm going to be using to do that. And so it's going to be, it's 4-ply here. Not quite. It's actually 4-ply. Yeah. One's a big fiberglass rod, 3 more carbon fiber. And then there's another carbon fiber one that goes in here. So I'm going to do the same type of construction here where it's got one long one that runs all the way through. And I'm going to brace that in the direction that it's forced to go by putting a shorter one underneath and a longer one over top to protect and support it and really provide extra support. And then I'm going to have to paracord the crap out of that whole area and lock it all in nice and tight. But that's okay. I got that. And at the end of this will be much stronger. And that's what I want. So I've decided this can handle a lot more tension than I thought. And at the level of tension it can handle and the amount of poundage it can handle, there's not much point because it's not strong enough of limbs to really snap that kind of arrow speed at the weight of arrow I want to sling. So, which is hunting weight. And doing that on a feather light bow like this is unheard of. So what I want to do is make this happen, and I know I can. So this experiment has proven that to me 100%. This was totally a success. It's led me to a prototype short bow that is about to be badass. But it also meant that I'm not doing the bungee system. I'm not doing the dual bow on this. In fact, when you do a dual bow and a bungee system is going to be on the long bow I'm building. It's 5 feet tall. And it will have about a 200-pound pull at maximum. But with the bungee system and 2 strings, you won't ever pull 200 pounds. You'll pull 120 and 130, and it'll hit like a 150-pound bow. It'll lose a lot of weight in terms of how it hits, but at 200, it's got so much to give, it won't matter. I could lose 25% of its power, and it'd still be the most powerful bow I ever shot. And at that point be really sweet and smooth about it as well, which is exactly what I'm designing it for. That being said, I also designed a short bow that's a smaller version of it that's going to be brutal. It's going to be 110, 120-pound pull without any trouble at all. And so what I'm going to do is make this my light short bow, which means I'm aiming for a draw weight of right around 50 to 55 pounds. That was always my preferred lightweight bow weight, and I find 50 and 55 is just perfect. 55 really is nice for a light bow. So that's going to be the goal. I'm getting really close. In fact, I had more than 55. I know at one point I had 65 at the back end, but the arrow speed suffered at that point because the limbs were being bent so much and under so much tension all the time that they really didn't snap back very far, which means I lose the joy of having these light, fast tips because they're not able to snap back. So that was something I realized. Doing the dual bow setup, it stops my tips from really snapping back because they're limited by the other. It's like putting a limiter strap on your bow when you're unleashing that lighter pull. But at the same time, when you go to pull it, it pulls so much nicer. It pulls so much smoother, and it builds tension so much nicer. And it releases so much smoother that it really is nice. And because of that, I know that I want to do it. I just realized a few things. One, if I'm going to do this dual tensioning system, this is just going to be a tensioning line and I'm not going to draw off it. That takes away a lot of the complication, which is why it's here like this. This could just be a tensioning line, only I actually want it on the other side. I'm going to recurve this, and that is going to stay there because then I'm going to take one of these strings. It's actually already on it and ready to go, as you can see, and wired out to the tip. And then I'm going to recurve that sucker until this meets that. So hold on. Sorry about that. Okay, so because I have all these plans to recurve this again, I am going to pull this off again and know that I've got to fix this. Like I said, I was about to restring it and then I found this, but it gave me an opportunity to show you guys an update. And basically what I've decided is that this really stiff paracord is actually kind of too good for this bow. It's too strong and too stiff for a bow that's designed to be really light and flexible and have all its parts flexible. This will be useful for the war bow, and so is this. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this off. I'm going to reinforce those limbs like I talked about. I'm going to pull this back to here and make sure that paracord is all clear and tied off correctly. And then I'm going to go from there. And I'm going to reinforce this, which means I need more epoxy or I need more tape. And I in fact, need both. But I'm going to temporary tape it for now and line them up and get them into the place that I want them and leave it off tension for a while and let it sit that way. And then when I get my epoxy and all the rest of the goodies that I'm going to need to finish it, I'll go back to work on this one and get it done. In the meantime, I've done a lot of great development work, guys, but development work is exactly what this is. I am developing a prototype bow. That is a very fast limb tip. I'm also doing a lot of experimenting and finding out how light of materials can I use. This works, but it's too weak for my purposes. Even though I can pull really hard weight on it, the snap response from the bow isn't as strong as I would like if I keep a limiter strap on it. So what I need is to just have it be one bow. Well, if that's going to be the case, then this has to be thicker. This is too thin. In fact, this would be better if I snip these off right here, snip, snip, and just use this as a short bow and set it up as a short bow. In fact, it'd be a really short, like 2 foot, 24-inch type bow. And I don't really want that. Although you'll notice when it's stretched out now, it's actually quite big. It's got some height to it. In fact, it's well over a 4-foot bow now. But you can see naturally on its own, even without this line on it, it had a really nice bow to it, a really nice curve. That by definition is not a recurve. That is a curve that's built into the bow structurally. That's what I did. Now I'm going to bend it back the other way and turn it. Now what's interesting is I've had it tensioned it in that direction, then kept it and used it in that direction for 3-4 days. Now I'm going to bend it back around the other way and it will get stronger. But before I do, I have to back up these limbs. And this is why I'm doing it this way. It's actually why I want this on, holding it this way, holding these limbs here, no, putting no pressure here, because this is where I have to reinforce it. So I've started with this piece of paracord. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to feed more through and wrap it tight, 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 tight after I tape it. And that way I'll lock that one in place along the back of this limb and tight, tight, tight all the way across. Epoxy, tape, then paracord on top, then more tape on top of that to lock in the paracord. And it'll all stay really tight just like the rest of this has. It's been perfect. That's a really great method to do this. So now that I know that, and I know these are a bit too flimsy for the strength of bow that I want, I'm going to put another brace in there, like I said, and then another brace to connect the two. On the inside. So it'll be braced on the outside going this way and on the inside cutting across this way, and both of those braces will overlap, which will make this a very strong portion of the bow, which is good because this is where it's going to have the string. No, I'm going to actually move the string right out to the tip here, guys. I've decided I want a longer bow than what I had, and in the end, it's only going to be bowed about like that when it's actually in use, which would give me an actual bow height right around 44 inches, which is what it was when I first built it. And then it started getting bowed over more and more and more and more and more. Well, at 44 inches, it's a short longbow, which is one of the reasons I called it a longbow to start with. And in the beginning it was, but by the end you couldn't tell because I had bent it over so much that it was no longer a longbow. By definition, it had become a short bow. And so I thought I'd show you guys how that works too. So that's it for this video, guys. It's really late. I'm off to bed. And I love you guys, man. Like, share, subscribe. Don't shoot each other with the arrows. Have fun and build, man. It's always a pleasure to build and to design and to invent and to create. And I love this whole process, man. It's been awesome. Keith. And on that note, it's not done. And it just keeps getting better the more I dial it in. And I'm already so excited about it because all these little ideas worked really well. And for one thing or another, including the failed bungee idea, which didn't fail. It worked beautifully, increased the tension along the back string and gave me much more tension, allowed me to pull a much higher poundage bow with much easier pull. But in the end, the bungee weight sapped too much energy from the string snapping back, and the fact that I had a second limb right here limiting. It was like a limiter strap when the bow's trying to snap out and give me fast arrow speeds. When I got the tensions between the two just right and the limb deflection is exactly perfect, it actually worked really, really well. But if you don't have it set up fucking flawlessly, don't even bother, because it's a pain in the butt to keep it that way. It's not really what I want, and I can't recommend it for the ultimate bushcraft. But it is if you need a quick survival bow, because you get short and long capabilities. And if you know what you're doing and set it up, I would build that bow in the bush 100% every time, because it's small, fast, agile, and accurate, which is why I'm building this one. I want it to be all those things. But as such, I've realized for maximum arrow speeds, I can't have two strings on it. I need proper limb strength out at the tips, and I need proper limb deflection at the right angles with the right bracing and the right draw height, and all that stuff has to be there within a certain range. I had this one in that range, but the other one can't be. If you're running two strings, one of them has to have a retarded brace height, and it really contaminates the dynamics of the bow. You want that bow out at the tip. Even if I make it a recurve, which I'm about to, I want that bowing out at the tip. So that's enough said. I'll show you guys at the next step. As you can see, with no tension on it, it still had a really nice curve. And even these members, now that there's nothing on them, are still maintaining that angle that they were programmed with, which is really nice to see. You can see that bend here, and that's great. So it meant that my tensioning job was successful and is actually still providing tension to this whole system. Plus, now it's been trained to be in this shape. One of the reasons I'm leaving this on is because until my work is done, I don't want to lessen that shape. I want it to hold that shape until the last second when I bend it around right before I put the string on it. Believe it or not, that's the best thing for it. That being said, that's it for this one. I just go further, but it's going to be another half an hour video if I do, and they get awkward to upload that long. Nobody wants to watch them at that length, and I don't really blame them. It gets boring. They just skip ahead. But unfortunately, there's so much good information that you really need to see the whole thing and see all the considerations that go into it if you're going to build one. So that's just how it is. So I try to make the explanations as in-depth as possible, share as many techniques as I can, like maintaining the tension on a recurve before you actually recurve it. That's a good trick. Also, these are now coated in epoxy, as you can see, and it does toughen the string. I just have to go and take all the excess off. I haven't waxed them yet. I said I'd show you guys that. I will. I also have this one to treat that hasn't been epoxied or waxed yet, but I love this bow already, guys. This is going to be my favorite light bow of all time. It already is. It's been a lot of fun to play with, but it wasn't the most accurate. It had tiller issues because of the lack of bracing out here and the amount of tension that was on the bow. So I'm going to fix both those problems, give it some nice tension. I might even do it a short bow with a serious recurve and leave these bent the way they are, because when I bend it back the other way, these will stay at this angle, guys. And what do you see there? That's a nice recurve tip for a bow that's going to be anchored right about here. That'll be sweet. And I can tie off these tips to make them have the shape I want. And I will do that at some point, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see what happens. All I know for sure right now is I am going to recurve it when I get to the next step, and all I have to do is clean this up, and then I'm there. So once I do that, I will string it back the other way, recurve the whole thing, let it come back into shape. I might even leave this one on the back side of it to hold that shape while I force the tips into a different shape, and that way I can do this separately. Hell no. I want them all to be one limb, strong as I can possibly make it, and then I'm going to recurve it. I'm also going to design my tip layout with my reinforcements so that it's designed not to be in this position, but to be flipped around exactly opposite of that. Even now, just trying to flip that around before the bracing happens, it doesn't want to give. It wants to stay in this position. It's really nice. So I know I've done a good job. It's properly prepared now, really nice and equally too. You can see this one has a nice equal desire. They both want to kick straight up on a nice angle. It's actually really nice to see this being this successful as far as all that stuff goes and not being broken. But now I just need to finalize it and lock these in, make these stronger. Then once I'm done and these are properly reinforced and braced, my bowstring will actually be here. I'm going to use this bowstring, and then I'm going to keep the other two for other projects rather than just making a bushcraft bow where I put a whole bunch of extra paracord on it I don't actually need. Paracord's precious, man. So I'm going to be a little more frugal with that. I know I can build an extra bow if I do, and that's actually important because I have a whole bunch more materials, guys. I got some really nice sticks, some gorgeous ones too, and they're going to make really pretty bows. So, and I don't mean the kind of pretty bows you put on a doggy. I'll be back. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. This has actually been a great project. I've already learned a lot. I've made the ideal handle. It's really perfect. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with so many aspects of this. I just got to lock in the tiller to make it more stiff and rigid at the tips, and this is going to be an epic bow. Keith out.